Well, great to have you with us again for another in our instalments this year of the Law and You interview series for Law Week 2020, all online, as you'll be aware by now. And today we're going to be talking about housing and tenancy, which is such a critical issue at this time, with so many people feeling desperately uncertain about their circumstances and under intense pressure at home. So we will explore those issues in depth in just a moment with two very knowledgeable people in the field. But first, let me acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we listen and view this discussion this afternoon, and pay my profound respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So let me introduce you first to Kirsty Waller, who is the manager at Housing Justice, which is part of ARC Justice at, well, I think you're based in Bendigo, but you cross the whole Loddon and Campaspe, is that fair to say?
Correct, yeah.
And also to Jennifer Beveridge, who is the CEO of Tenants Victoria, which, although based in Melbourne, has a very statewide brief as well. Great to have you with us, Jen.
Great to be here.
So Kirsty, tell us just a bit, because you're part of a community legal centre. How does Housing Justice work? What do you do?
So we work with tenants, vulnerable tenants throughout Loddon and Campaspe, and we've got the two programs, which is the Tenancy Assistance and Advocacy Program, which is funded through Consumer Affairs, and that's where we provide information and support at BCAT and negotiations with tenants as well. And
Jen, you have I suppose a twin role in providing advice and information, but also in amassing the experience of people so that you can advocate for reform and change as well, or different service delivery.
That's right. Tenants Victoria is a specialist community legal centre focusing on tenancy, or those who rent their home here in Victoria. We're kind of like the peak body for anyone who rents their home, and we provide services, we provide a range of education, and of course we're involved in advocacy and working with government quite closely to share those experiences of individual renters back to inform law reform and policy change.
And I think it's worth pointing out that the renting population is significant, and I think that's become, probably better known now than it was before through the COVID experience. But we're talking about 1 in 3 Victorians who rent their homes. Is that right?
That's right. And that's on the increase. So a number of years ago, that was 25%. Now we've nudged over 30%. And you're right, that's a significant number of people who rent their homes. They don't just live in rented accommodation, they actually rent their home, and home is such an important place for all of us to be, particularly at the moment with the health crisis.
Absolutely. So Kirsty, what are the sorts of issues, to ask the big question, what are you getting coming through Housing Justice? What are you hearing, and what experiences are people having?
Two main ones that we've noticed is landlords wanting to sell the property or move back in. Not something that happens a lot in the country, so we've noticed that, and we do wonder how many people are affected out there who are landlords and do have to move back into their homes.
So that'd be about people being under stress themselves as landlords and feeling like, okay, well, I've got this other property, needs must, and I've got to move in there and keep my tenants out.
Yeah.
What happens then for a tenant who, at this point in time will probably find it really difficult to find somewhere else to go?
Yeah, I think it's important that we, even though we can't assist and keep them in that property, or fight to keep them in that property, we can certainly support them through the process and make sure that they're linked into our local housing services.
And I suppose people think about going to VCAT, and that sort of fills them with a bit of trepidation and concern that they're getting offside with the landlord or with the agent, and they're making trouble, and that they should probably just kind of go quietly, or not get a black mark against their name and not go to the expense and the challenge of a legal process. Does that put a lot of people off?
It's a common issue that we see, that people are very scared to go to VCAT or to even challenge notices. So it's important that we provide them with the information that it's okay. You're allowed to do that, and it's not up to the landlord to make that decision. It's up to VCAT, and they'll make an independent decision from that.
Jen, I know that there was an announcement pretty early in the piece from the Prime Minister about evictions, and I suppose I'm moving one step beyond the point that Kirsty's made around, a justifiable reason to have to leave your home, in that the person who owns it wants to move in. But if you are being evicted, then what we heard from the Prime Minister, gosh knows how many weeks ago now, seemed to say that has to stop. We're not evicting anyone. But since then, there's been a sort of big silence around what that actually means. So can you tell us where we're up to and whether or not you can be evicted at the moment?
Sure. So you're right, the Prime Minister made an announcement after National Cabinet on the 23rd of March, acknowledging that there would be a nationwide agreement to cease evictions for rental arrears. So it was directly as a result of the COVID situation, acknowledging that many, many people were in financial situations that were going to make it difficult for them to maintain their tenancy by paying rent. So that took a couple of weeks longer than we expected to come. And then it wasn't until the 23rd of April that the Victorian legislation was passed through the Parliament, putting some form here in Victoria to what that actually looked like. And as of the 24th of April, but backdated to the 29th of March, it's no longer legal to evict people as a result of hardship due to COVID. We've got a scheme in place to enable people to negotiate rent reductions for the duration, so till the end of September. There won't be any rent increases. There's a mediation and dispute resolution process that's been established to assist those where an agreement can't be made around the rent reduction. We've got a rent relief program, so people are able to apply for some additional financial support. And then there are a range of other measures that have been put in place to incentivise landlords to kind of get on board. But I think the critical thing that continues to be reiterated is that people need to engage in this process in good faith. And there's an expectation that there will be good faith discussions, and the intention is that those who rent their home won't be disadvantaged during this time.
Are you hearing stories of issues that are arising there where people aren't operating in good faith?
People are people, and some people respond positively. They understand the intent, they get on board, and there have been a number of, I think about 3,500 agreements that have been lodged with Consumer Affairs already for rent reductions. But inevitably, there are those who engage in bad behaviour, and these do disadvantage tenants. We've heard lots of stories where tenants have asked for a rent reduction and have been flatly refused. I'm sure we've seen in the media the reports where they've been asked to prove that they've dipped into their superannuation or fill out quite extensive financial information to prove that they're experiencing hardship. And so, yes, there are lots of scenarios where things haven't happened in good faith. People have been contacting us. We've been collecting those stories, and we've been using those to advocate to government to help shape what this package looks like and where the tweaks need to be made to actually honour the intent, which is to support tenants through this process.
And we'll come back to that bigger story in a moment. But Kirsty, I just wanted to check in with you. Are you hearing similar things around the sort of rent support questions and issues that Jen's raised in regional Victoria as well, around the sort of, some people operating in good faith and others perhaps taking advantage?
Absolutely. For the first time, we've had inquiries from international students, and I'll give you an example of one where the landlord wanted her visa, her passport, her parents' bank account details. It was just ridiculous. So we contacted that gentleman and advised him that that wasn't appropriate. And we've had to step in with a couple of negotiations as well, because people are they're fearful, because there's that power imbalance between a landlord and a tenant. So we're more than happy to support people through that.
So, Jen, are you hearing more stories to sort of pull together to paint a bigger picture for government around what they might need to do in order to make sure that this delivers the sort of support that it was initially intended to? Because I think there's no question that there was goodwill in the first instance. It's about the execution.
That's right. And if I can just acknowledge the intent and the goodwill, there have been a number of errors made. I'm sure there'll be a lot of criticism as we reflect back on this, but government has responded well, and they continue to be open to hear the feedback that we're providing. We have the opportunity to have direct conversations with various ministers and their staff, and also senior bureaucrats. And just yesterday I was in a discussion, and we were encouraged to share the stories with particular examples and particular businesses and property managers who aren't acting in good faith. So Consumer Affairs have requested that information, and they will follow up. So I think it's really important that those people who are having bad experiences do make contact, with any service, but particularly let us know. We have a portal on our website called Tell Your Story, and that's been proven. We've had hundreds and hundreds of people contact us with their story there, and we have been able to collate the themes and identify the things that can be changed, and then forwarded through that through to government. The other thing that's important for people to remember, if we think back about that power imbalance, we've had a number of people advise us that they've received threatening letters, particularly advising that their name will be put on a tenancy database. And that's one of the things that is not allowed. So during this period, it's not people who are in rent arrears or financial distress. That won't be a reason to put someone's name onto the tenancy database. So people need to feel confident, and they need to act with confidence, and they need to understand that the intent of the law is on their side, and so to pursue the system through the process that's been outlined to ensure that they do get a good outcome for themselves.
So I suppose the lesson there is, if it looks oppressive and you're thinking this is not like my previous arrangement, or they're proposing that I commit to all sorts of criteria that I didn't have to before, don't sign until such time as you've got clear information. Would that be reasonable?
That's absolutely right. And the new process that's been set up at Consumer Affairs Victoria will help tenants navigate their way through that. So if an agreement can't be reached, that's okay. That's not the end of it. Contact Consumer Affairs, ask them to help. They'll get involved and assist in a mediation process. If that doesn't work, then it can be referred to dispute resolution, and they are able to make binding orders. One of the things that has been good that's come through in the new legislation is the reasonable and proportionate test, and therefore it's, that gives people, or dispute resolution and also VCAT, legal grounds to consider both sides and their arguments, and what, under the circumstances, would be reasonable and proportionate. And that's a good thing for tenants.
And the other sort of longer term impact that had occurred to me in terms of what effect it may have on renting people is the prospect that we will look at distressed sales down the track as well, if not already, that landlords will find themselves in a position where they have to sell the property, which may also mean that a tenant has to leave. And that could be the long tail of this situation, couldn't it?
At the moment, we're looking to the 29th of September, which is the end of this 6 months. That seems like a long way off, but that will come very quickly. I think we will see impacts on the housing market. We will also see impacts when the income support drops off and people aren't able to find work again. I think the possibilities are significant and vast and far-reaching, and as you say, there will be a very long tail to this. And while we've had a spike in demand to our services over the last few months, it's not going to end. I suspect the spike will be a new normal as people require information about their tenancies, their rights as a renter, and then requiring some legal assistance to help them when situation gets difficult.
We appreciate enormously the support that both your organisations offer to Victorians in need, and we will put up all your contact details at the end of this conversation. And I thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Thank you.
Kirsty Waller from Housing Justice at Art Justice, and Jennifer Beveridge from Tenants Victoria. Thank you again for joining us for the Law and You series, and I'll see you again soon.